Welcome! Today we're exploring an intricately layered double diamond stitch which shows off the fascinating properties of reversible knitting. First, we'll explore the special stitches required, and then we'll knit a swatch with a basic stitch pattern and selvage. After that, I have 3 improvements to the basic stitch pattern. One is subtle and easy. The next is a bit more complex, but I think it's really worth it. And the last one is just a bit of fun. At the end, I'll show you a close-up of this table mat I've knit and the cast-off edge. Awesome Reversible Knitting aims to create knitting projects with fabric that looks great on both sides, lies wonderfully flat, and has interesting structure and texture. So let's knit. The double diamond stitch has 4 pairs of reversible stitches, one for each of the 4 types of rows. We'll go from simplest to most complex. The first pair is the basic knit and purl stitches, which are the reverse of each other. The second pair is knit 2 together, a right-leaning decrease, and the reverse stitch, purl 2 together, which is also right-leaning. The third is the corresponding increases I've chosen. First knit into the stitch below, and then slip the existing knit stitch with yarn and back. One more time, knit 1 below, slip the stitch with yarn and back. The purl version is the reverse. Purl into the stitch below from the back, and slip the existing purl stitch, this time with yarn in front. One more time, purl 1 below, slip the stitch with yarn in front. The fourth pair are crossed stitches. I'll do each combo twice. On a knit purl pair of stitches, pick the purl stitch from behind with the working needle, slip the knit stitch off the holding needle and pick it up with the working needle. Now slip both stitches back on the holding needle. Now work the first stitch as a purl and the second as a knit. On a purl knit pair, slip the stitches to the working needle, pick the purl stitch from behind with the holding needle this time, slip the knit stitch off the working needle and pick it up with the holding needle, and now work the first stitch as a knit and the second as a purl. Let's do both of those again. For cross 1 left, the purl stitch is crossed behind the knit stitch. Purl the purl and knit the knit. For cross 1 right, the purl stitch is again crossed behind, purl the purl and knit the knit. I've used these stitches before. It's the basis of the extra large project in the Learn to Knit in Cotton series and the crossed heart stitch. It's a self-reversible compound stitch. Let's put the 4 sets of stitches together to create the double diamond stitch. The double diamond stitch is a 4-stitch 8-row repeat with 4 row types. I'm casting on 4 repeats and I'm adding 2 selvage stitches, so 18 stitches. I'm using a ribbed long tail cast on to match the stitch pattern. After the initial yarn on repeat, cast on 1 knitwise, 2 purlwise, and another knitwise. It takes a few repeats to really appreciate the stitch pattern. You can use a knit-based long tail cast on instead if you want. And 1 additional knitwise stitch for the selvage. I've marked the odd row side. The first row is a straight row in pattern. After slipping the selvage, repeat purl 1, knit 2, purl 1. This row adds height to the diamonds. Work to the last stitch, which is the selvage, and as always knit. The next row is a crossed row. After slipping the selvage, you can see that the next pair of stitches are knit-looking and then purl-looking. So cross the purl-looking stitch behind the knit-looking stitch, then purl the purl and knit the knit. The next 2 are the other way. Pick the purl-looking stitch behind the knit-looking stitch to cross them, knit the knit in front, and purl the purl at the back. We'll do that for each pair. Cross 1 left in pattern, and cross 1 right in pattern, always with the knit stitch on top and working them the same as they look. Continue to the selvage and knit it. This row creates the layering of the stitch pattern. Row 3 is a decrease row. First knit the single looking stitch. Now repeat purl 2 together and knit 2 together. Both stitches should be the same, 2 purls or 2 knits. When you have 4 stitches left, purl 2 together one more time, then knit the single knit looking stitch and the selvage. The decrease row forms the top of the diamonds on each side. The fourth row type is the increase row. After the selvage, purl the first single stitch. Now make a knit 1 below increase under the knit 2 together and slip the existing stitch with yarn and back. The next stitch is a purl 2 together looking stitch. Increase using the purl 1 below from the back and slip the existing stitch with yarn in front. Continue in this way so you have 2 stitches coming out of the same stitch for all of the decreased stitches. When you have 3 stitches left, knit 1 below and slip the existing stitch. Purl the single purl looking stitch and knit the selvage. The increases start the bottom of the diamonds on each side. As we work the next 4 rows, I'll show you a simple change that improves the reversibility. Row 5 is a straight row and pattern, so knit the knit looking stitches and purl the purl looking stitches. You can see 2 stitches coming out of the 2 together stitches. Work them both the same way. Row 6 is a crossed stitch row, this time starting with cross 1 right. For each pair, make sure to cross the knit stitch over the purl stitch. This makes the diamonds look like knit stitches on each side of the fabric. Row 7 is a decrease row. This time you can see that the first stitch is purl looking, so we'll match it. And the next 2 stitches are both knit looking. So the first decrease is knit 2 together, then purl 2 together. The knit stitches will naturally sit in front of the purl stitches. The last set is knit 2 together and purl the last stitch before the selvage, which is knit. For row 8, we'll make the improvement. Knit the single stitch and increase the first pair using the purl 1 below, slip 1 with yarn in front. If you have a keen eye, you may have noticed that the purl 1 below and knit 1 below increases look slightly different from the one side of the fabric to the other. To make them the same, after the knit 1 below, let it drop off the working needle. Then slip the existing stitch with yarn and back and pick up the knit 1 below stitch again. In this way, it matches the purl 1 below on the other side of the fabric, which is slightly left leaning, and makes the top of the diamond look nicer too. I'm not sure how to chart this one. If you have any ideas, please leave a comment. The second improvement is a bit more involved, but if you've made it this far, I'm sure you can do it. When you look at the edges of the swatch, you can see the side corners of the first and last diamonds are rounded and aren't nicely pointy like the ones in the middle. In order to solve this, I've added an extra stitch to the selvage to anchor the point in the decrease row. The impact to the other rows is a bit woolly, but I think it's really worth it for the end result. I'll go through the key changes. If you have questions or are interested in a pattern on Ravelry, please let me know. For the cast-on row, add the anchor stitch as extra purl stitches between the existing selvage stitches and the 1 knitwise, 2 purlwise, 1 knitwise repeat. Row 1 and 5 are the straight rows. Work all stitches as they look, including the anchor, which is the reverse of the stitch next to it, so it blends in. For the crossed rows 2 and 6, change the anchor stitch to the reverse. If it looks like a knit, purl it, and if it looks like a purl, knit it. So it continues to blend in. For the decrease row 3, now we can use the anchor stitch to create the edge point with the knit 2 together. On the other edge, to make the edge point lean out, I've used an SSK, worked through the back leg to attach the diamond to the anchor stitch. For the increase row 4, I worked a knit purl into the same stitch to put the anchor stitch back as the reverse to stay in pattern at the beginning of the row, and a purl knit into the same stitch at the end of the row. For the decrease row 7, the knit-looking diamond is on the other side of the fabric, so we need to use an SSP worked through the back leg at the beginning of the row, which is a bit trickier. And for row 8, it's a purl knit increase at the beginning of the row and a knit purl increase at the end. So the anchor stitch is always the reverse of the stitch next to it on the inside. Before I show you the table mat that I've knit, we'll look at the fun improvement. If you pull up longer loops on the decrease and increase rows, the stitches look like bunny ears. I decided to make a smaller project with this stitch, so I made this table mat. I used Caron Simply Soft in this rich blue with the needles suggested on the ball band. I found it a bit difficult to work the compound stitches when I knit too tightly, so I made sure to stay relaxed. To match the cast on, after a row 1 or 5 worked loosely, I used the Icelandic bind off. To make sure it didn't pucker, after the first stitch, I actually used the Icelandic bind off technique with a knit 2 together, which worked quite well. Overall, it's a beautiful stitch for a project like this. Let me know what yarn you chose for your double diamond stitch project, and if you used the improved selvage. I'm aiming to finish the dragon cowl video, so that should be the next video to come out. Or maybe I'll do the naughty stitch. It's an interesting variation of crossed stitches that my friend S invented. So pick up your knitting and create something awesome. I'll do my best to respond to comments, and I'd love to hear about your favorite reversible knitting pattern. Also feel free to like and share this video and subscribe to the channel for more awesome reversible knitting. For those of you still here, for the last few years I've been working hard to find simple ways to feel better. What I call my daily well-being practices. This is not medical advice, I'm just sharing what works for me. Today's well-being practice is about channeling our inner diamond. Of course they're beautiful, on the outside and right through to the heart. Diamonds are also very hard because of the pressure required to create them. So I strive to be able to withstand pressure and be beautiful through and through. Have an awesome day.